So we are going, I will introduce myself in a bit. We are going to be talking about the head and the heart, the surprising truth of how to get attention in 2025. So we have been through, yeah, that's working. Been through 2,000 campaigns that have been run by my company, Fourth Floor, with over 35 million data points. Even more data with taken from these 6 leading SaaS platforms, and done analysis of all 4,000 full games that were released last year on Steam. Most of the work is done by Miguel. There's only one of him, but there's lots of other data points. In order to get to what the surprising truth from all this data is, and what that surprising truth is that the most important thing is love, not just in life, but in thinking about how to market video games and how to get attention. So we will work backwards from there. So I'm Rich Keith. I am the founder, CEO of Fourth Floor. Before that, a long time ago, I was a games journalist. I was editor of Official PlayStation and Official PlayStation 2, a GTA many years ago. We had on the cover. I started out in the 90s on Arcade magazine. After that, I was a publisher, ran the business of, among other things, Edge and PC Gamer. And then for the last 7.5 years, I have been running Fourth Floor. So I want to start at the beginning, because this is about marketing, and what we often forget when we're talking about marketing is that there are 4 Ps to marketing, not just one. That the most important, that they are all vitally important, and the most important thing is the one that comes first, which is product, which in our case is the game and games. So when we talk about this journey through love, and what the most important thing is, and when we start with product, we're going to start with games. And so joining me on this talk is Simon, who's going to talk about product.
There I am. Look, there are 2 of me on screen. Hello. I'm Simon Byrne. I'm the MD of Yogscast Games. I've been lucky enough to work in the games industry since 1992, when as a young, fresh-faced, optimistic young man, I departed the mean streets of Bournemouth, moved to London to join Amiga Games magazine, The One, where I worked with David Upchurch and Gary Whitta. One of us went on to write a Star Wars movie, but I didn't fancy doing that. I wanted to carry on working in games, actually, sticking to my roots. I was journalist for a couple of years. After 2 very happy years, I moved from journalism into PR and marketing, launching games and franchises in the UK and across Europe. And after 20 very happy years, I made the leap into publishing when I joined what was then called Curve Digital. And during my 6 years there, 5 of them happy, I signed and launched over 20 games, which, according to figures from Gamalytic, have sold around 19 million copies on Steam, generating $120 million at retail, which I guess is a reasonable track record. I joined Yogscast Games in 2021. And during my almost 4 unanimously happy years, I've signed and launched 17 games here, making that 39 games in total that I've published. Now, love has always played a big part in the games I've signed, in particular the successes. And perhaps the biggest one was a game called Human Fall Flat, which was a game I signed and helped launch at Curve. It was created by a solo developer, Thomas, to play with his son. I first met him at Pocket Gamer, and I completely fell in love with what he was doing. He actually missed his flight back to come and meet the rest of the team back at the office. And that flight delay resulted in a game loved by millions around the world. We actually started working with him on it before the contract was signed, and I remember him telling me early on that we weren't behaving how publishers should, because we were doing the right thing. We loved each other from the off, and good things came from it. And then there's Autonauts, a game so special to me, I almost felt embarrassed to suggest that we had a professional relationship. Gary Penn, a founder of Denki, was someone that I'd long admired from his work on games magazines, and I'm lucky enough to count him as a dear friend. I remember seeing the first prototype for Autonauts in a room at the Develop Conference in Brighton, Gary hinting at the endless possibilities this adorable sandbox could create. And he describes my face as lighting up. But the truth is, I was blushing with how much I was falling for his game. Now, I wouldn't recommend you do this with all your publishers, but here's a picture of me and Gary nearly kissing. More recently at Yogscast, Hex Guardian, a game that we signed completely out of love. I think the entire Yogscast Games team begged that we signed it. This relationship blossomed over a long distance, much like my second marriage, as we got to know Yichi, a first-time solo developer based in China. Honestly, my team would have beat me to a pulp had we not signed it, and it was one of our highlights of 2024. And then there's PlayTime, a game I literally presented to the wider management team as something we had to sign. There was this huge strength of feeling across the Yogscast Games network and the Yogscast network. This is the first email about PlayTime that I received from Alex Turner at Yogscast, who'd seen a couple of our content creators playing it for hours. Alex loved it, tried it, loved it, and felt it was something that we could really help bring to life. And let me tell you, such was the amount of love knocking around. If there was a documentary of the collaboration between Alistair, Yogscast Games, and the Yogscast network, you wouldn't be able to show it before 9 p.m. And most recently, Dungeons and Degenerate Gamblers, a roguelike casino game, which we absolutely adored from its very early prototype, which we played before a certain other casino roguelike game had even appeared on Steam. During early conversations, we found the core of the idea really solid. But we were a bit worried about certain aspects of the game. Had a great loop, but it was a bit rough around the edges. And we worked really closely with Mike during that time, the solo developer, to find ways that we could support it. And the Yogscast team produced additional art. And the result has been a game that's recently tipped over 2 million grossed on Steam.
So, as Simon has just shown us, the publishers and developers need to be in love. So when you start with product, you've got to start that love affair right at the beginning, and that will really help the way that you work between publishers and developers. The next P is price, but we're not actually going to talk about that one. Not because it's not important; it is vitally important, but because it's a big topic, and we're going to move straight on to place, where we'll also touch on price, because what has happened recently over the last couple of years is that place. Whichever one we're talking about, but especially if we're talking about this one, which is mostly what we're talking about here, this place has become very price driven, and it's become a very difficult place to be if you want to sell games without thinking about promotion and being on sale the whole time. And that makes it harder and harder to sell games, because they can't just sit there in back catalogs selling slowly in the way that once they could. Steam as a platform is forcing you to go on sale and be in promotions at all times, and that's because Steam doesn't care about you if you're a developer or you if you're a publisher. All Steam cares about is their customers, is the player, and that is by any test a good thing. It just makes life a lot harder when you're thinking about how to promote and publish and get attention for your game, because getting in front of that audience on Steam is vitally important for any game. And it has become harder and harder as Steam has got more about trying to do things for the customer, and the primary thing it's done is drive prices down through essentially forcing you to be on sale, launch on sale, and then move from sale to sale. And what that means is that inevitable outcome of that is that, which is shown in the recent Newzoo data that they put out last month, is that individual game sales just have become much less effective at getting traffic onto the Steam page, and therefore selling games. I think anyone here who's a publisher or developer will recognize that instantly, that that's a real thing. Because if they only promote things on sale, then everything's going to be on sale, then obviously sales are not going to work as well. But what has increased, Newzoo shows, which is a route for everyone to be thinking about, is that increasingly external traffic, off-platform traffic, off Steam traffic has become more and more important on how you then drive people onto a game page. And more, the smaller the game, the more that's true. Bigger games obviously just don't, they already have some built-in IP, built-in understanding from the public already. But the smaller the game, the more that you need that external sources to drive traffic. Which brings us to promotion. And when you think about promotion, so as not to get confused with on Steam promotions, the fourth P of marketing, promotions is actually what we would call comms and advertising. Comms and marketing, comms and advertising is really what we're talking about. That is the one that people often just think about as marketing, but all the other stuff is more important. But the comms and advertising part of it has become more and more important now to be off when you think about that move of getting traffic from off platform. And that is what Fourth Floor does. This is not an ad for Fourth Floor, but just so you know, it's games marketing agency working in the space to help publishers and developers reach audiences. And we do that through influencer marketing, video production, and social and community management. And you can mix and match those things as you wish. And behind it all, where I started with the 2,000 campaigns and 35 million data points is our proprietary platform that holds all of that data and gives us a real understanding from a campaign level and from a game campaign level of what works and what doesn't work in terms of reaching and engaging audiences with messages about games. And as a company, we love games. So love is in everything we do, which is kind of where the thinking about how to do this talk came from. That idea that where we start at is falling in love with games and then wanting to work on them. I spend a lot of time telling people, I love your game. Can we do some work on it, please? So what has love got to do with it? There is lots of love-based song titles in here, by the way, if you haven't spotted that already. So what has love got to do with it? Because what happens a lot is when people are talking about marketing and marketing of games is where they start is what should we measure? What is measurable? And over the last 2-3 years, that conversation has inevitably landed on wish lists as the thing that people have been measuring and talking about pretty much endlessly. I believe we've reached peak wish list. I think we're getting past the point of people. It's been so talked about that everyone, the level of understanding of wish lists not being all important, I think, as we've reached that point. Wish lists have become so ubiquitous. Even YouTubers are talking about the way wish lists work. I'm not sure if everyone's seen this or this was on. Well, I'll just play it.
Have you all noticed this thing in the developer community? We've realized that sending people to do wish lists is actually not great.
Is it not great now?
No, it's not great. It's not bad, but it's not great. Wish lists actually decay over time. So if you wish list a game, if you do it right before launch, or if you do it right before a specific moment, it has a much higher effect than if you were a wish list 3 months ago. Like
when you say they decay over time, you're talking about because people are unwishlisting them or closing their accounts, right?
No. It's just the value of that wish list becomes lower in the algorithm.
So you're saying a game that gets 80,000 wish lists in a year, that exact same 80,000 wish list is going to be worth more than a game that got 80,000 wish lists over 5 years.
Exactly.
So everyone's talking about wish lists, and it's everywhere. I do think we've gone we have reached that point with wish lists, well, peak wish lists, and it's hit Goodhart's law, which is when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. People just try and get wish lists and therefore you start gaming the system in order to get more wish lists because that's your target, when really that is not what you're trying to do. And when we think about wish lists and how they then move on to sales, Simon's got some interesting data on that from Yogscast Games.
Yeah, so going back to that point, I think that it's, Rami from that clip earlier is completely right. One wish list is not the same as another, but there's so much talk and conversation around, how you should bring a game to market, and that devs have this mythical 7,000 wish list target hammered into them at almost every point in which they do. Now, I'm a big fan of sharing information. I'm a big fan of discussing what's going on. But that conversation around it all, and the surveys which show you, the industry average wish list conversion rates, where you get data from hundreds of publishers and devs, and you look at the average, you look at the median, it's like, okay, well, if you've got this number of wish lists, what can you expect? Now, I've previously been frustrated by these conversations where it's all about the numbers, and many of these surveys never ask whether the game is any good, right? Cool. So you can get loads and loads of wish lists, but at no point does anybody go, well, was it any good? And so I thought I would share what's happened at Yogscast Games and how wish lists have impacted sales, so that we can see what that industry average is. So this is for every game that I've launched at Yogs, prior to Kai's Prophecy, which we launched last month, and I don't have the sort of full picture of it at the moment. Now, we are, and never really have been, a wish list heavy company. Getting wish lists is easier for some publishers than others. Obviously, we do try to, because whilst I do question their value, they are a sign that you're getting your product in front of in front of an audience, and it is an indication of sort of how you should be feeling about things. But anyway, I've anonymized all of our games, and you can see from 116 the number of wish lists that we had before launch, and the idea being that if you have more wish lists, you're going to definitely get more sales. So the lowest there, I think, is a couple of thousand. There's a story behind that. And then the highest one is just under 140,000. So these were the wish lists of all those games before launch. So these are captured at 8 a.m. the morning of launch. Now, whenever we publish a game, the first sales, obviously, we're looking on the back end all the time, hitting F5 to see how the game's doing. But the first sort of sampling of numbers that we do is the first overnight sale. So Steam's day runs from midnight Pacific, which is usually 8 a.m. in the UK. So we take a snapshot at 8 o'clock in the morning and just to see where we are. Now, all of these, not every game has launched exactly the same time of day, the day before. So we're not comparing exact periods of time, but generally we launch between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. On a day. And as you can see, it's true enough, isn't it? Look, the game with the most wish lists overnight sold the most copies. It was far ahead in wish lists, it's doing far ahead in sales. You skip ahead to the next sales period that we record, and it's a different picture, right? So that those early snapshots that you take aren't always indicative of how a game is going to perform. And again, you can see there are a couple of titles there that are really catching up on the good start that game number 16 had. And certainly when you compare, I think 11 had almost a fifth of the wish lists of game number 16, and yet sales, they're 10,000 out, so 20% out. And then you skip ahead to a first full month, and it's a different story entirely. So game number 11 has really pulled ahead to the extent that actually that y-axis doesn't tell the full picture here. But what you should be able to see is that more wish list does not necessarily equal more sales.
Right, thank you, Simon. So wish lists, nevertheless, are not everything, but they are success indicators, a success indicator, and therefore obviously worth trying to get as many wish lists as possible, and not suggesting that's not a good path to go down at all. Obviously, there's an intention to at least be interested in the game further on, but there are a lot of success indicators, and really it depends on the game for which ones will be the most important for you. And we've seen in Yogscast Games, but also in lots of other publishers that we work with, variations of this, of where one or other of these is a better indicator for how a game has performed than wish lists, and that is game dependent. So there are certain sorts of games that a big Discord membership is just a fantastic indicator of sales. I mean, actually, Discord members is one of the definite indicators that actually works across almost everything. But different games will have different success indicators, but that's what they are. They're success indicators, so they're the thing that you're measuring. But what are we actually trying to do? And I will bring this back to love soon enough. What we're trying to do is stimulate demand. We want people to want our games. We want people to want to own them and play them and have them in their library at the very least. I mean, play them, but you really want people to be playing and want to play a lot of it. You want people to fall in love with your game. That is, in the same way as a publisher needs to fall in love with a game before they publish it, you need the player to start falling in love with your game as early as possible. To do that, and then they will remember that game. So they need to fall in love with it. You need to create, to get slightly nerdy marketing on it, you create memory structures in the target buyers, in their heads, right from the off and as early as possible. Now, because falling in love isn't an instant thing, and nor is any purchasing. So if you think about the game buying category, within that, there will be people who are a good fit for your game. Now, you want people who are a good fit for your game, have heard about your game, but also are ready to buy, and you want that bit that's right in there. And the thing is, with that spot is a very small amount of people at any one time. So when you think about the content level, as in they've seen your trailer, they've seen a video or a stream about the game, they've seen an ad somewhere, of those people, even if they are really good fit for your game and therefore a good chance that they will buy it, there's a very small amount of them that'll be ready to buy. Almost every study shows, it's a rule of thumb, but almost every study shows about 5% of people are what's called in market at any one time. So roughly speaking, only 5% of the audience who have a high propensity to buy that game will be ready to buy at any given moment. So each piece of content isn't going to drive all 100% of those people to buy at that point, but that doesn't mean that. But if you do it right, then they will go on and buy later. And if you keep talking to them and create a dialogue with them, let's keep talking to them. And of that 5%, if you're relying on links in ads or links in YouTube videos or in chat on Twitch, of the 5%, only 10% of the 5% who actually are ready to buy and go on to buy will use that link. So about 0.5%. If you're trying to track the success of your marketing from a tracked link, a bit.ly or something of that kind, you're only going to see a very small amount of the impact of your piece of marketing, because so few people click links, and not everyone is going to be in market at that point. But you've got a good chance of them going on and buying your game later on when they are in market, when they are ready to buy. And so how do you do that? You do that through getting them to fall in love. And what we know about the link between the actual data between what conversion looks like, actually getting people, what indicators actually work, then there are a couple of things that do correlate to sales, and one of those is review rating. The better rated a game is, the more chance it will sell more. I mean, that sounds straightforward, and it is pretty straightforward. Review rating really, really matters, but it's actually not strongly correlated. There is correlation between that and sales, but it's not nearly as strongly correlated as the number of reviews, which has a very large correlation between number of views and sales of games. That's the number one indicator of how many sales you're going to get. Now, clearly, a lot of the more sales you get, the more chance you will have more reviews, because more people will have played it, and therefore you will get more reviews. But nevertheless, trying to find a way to make sure that people are engaged with a game that they will write a review is vitally important, because it becomes an indicator for everything, for sales. And in order to get people there, you really need them to be in love with your game. I mean, it's actually true that it doesn't matter if those, it doesn't necessarily matter if some of those reviews are negative, but it's just the volume of reviews is the thing. But you just want people interested enough to do it, to have attention on your game. But getting them to fall in love is not an immediate process. It's not a one ad, one video, one stream process. Getting people to fall in love with the game and taking that time takes time, and you need to think about how to build that relationship with an audience, with a potential buyer over time, and not rely on immediate performance-based advertising. There's an absolute place for that, but that is at the sharp end. Once you've built that love in someone's, I will probably should stop saying love, really. I've said it about a million times already. But once you've built that emotional connection with someone, because that's what we're talking about here, we're talking about building emotional connections that really matter to people. The number one thing, if you ask people, when we do ask people, what would get you to buy a game, is the number one answer is always, my friends are playing it. And that level of everyone's playing this game is the fastest way to, or people I know, my friends are playing, is the fastest way. Games are by their nature social things, even if you're not literally playing with people on a multiplayer, for instance. But if your friends are playing it, you're more likely to do it. But in terms of marketing that, how do you build that emotional connection? Well, those things are about community, storytelling, advocacy, nostalgia, and how you build that idea into your marketing, and how you talk about your game, and how you understand the game. And these become emotional triggers then that you can trigger over time, and that is how you get people to engage and slowly fall in love with your game. So when it comes to it, they will buy it at the end. When you do that, when you take this long view of it, you get increased long-term engagement. You're more likely to buy, and you get organic advocacy, which really should be the end goal of all of this activity, is to get word of mouth to happen, to get people to tell other people they're playing games, or the game is positive, because people buy the games that their friends are playing. So what should we do? What should we be doing? Well, you have to have a good product, clearly. Get the pricing right. You need to make sure, I'm very much not saying don't get Steam right. You need to make sure everything on Steam is done as well as it can be, that your game page is set up in order to get people to buy from there. It's all very well driving people to a page. You need them to convert from there. So assuming all those things are done, the product's great, the pricing is right, you've got Steam happening, what should you do on promotion? So just, this is the same slide, by the way. It's there on purpose. When you're thinking about promotion, it's then thinking about what can you do off platform, off Steam, to drive people onto Steam. And so when we're talking about that, the places that the audiences are those social places. It is Discord, YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, increasingly TikTok, are the places where they are, and so how can you capture people's attention there and take them onto Steam is the game. The song-based love song-based titles continue, and the way you do that is to get them in love, but people don't fall in love immediately. There's usually a long romancing takes place, and often you'll get engaged on the way, which is a terrible pun for the fact that the best way to understand how to engage people is to look at the best metric, to use is to look at engagement on the content about the game. When we look at the thousands of campaigns and games that are in our database, what we see, these are engagement rates, these percentages on content. So these are YouTube content engagement rates across hundreds and hundreds of games. And what you see is a very clear pattern that the easiest place to get engagement is when a game is announced, when people first hear about a game, and when it launches. They're the biggest engagement points. However, in order to have that long-running relationship, the thing to focus on is that bit between announce and launch, and how do you continue to build up, to romance the player during that time. And there's a really good case study that Simon has from Dungeons and Degenerate Gamblers.
Yeah, and this is this applies equally to our other biggest games, and it's all about how you start small. You shouldn't be afraid to start small. The important thing is that you appreciate that you're on a long journey, and that you'll be over time really building and engaging with your audience. And I pulled together a snapshot of some of the work that Mike did from Purple Moss Collectors on his own before we signed with him, through to some work that we helped with, and it just shows how frequently there were demos and posts going live to Steam in the period where the Steam page went up first, through to participating in events, don't be afraid to put playable demos, even if they're rough and ready. If you're proud of what you're doing, you know that the core loop is there. Don't be afraid to show it. And so again, you can see the dates that the different builds were uploaded for people to try, and then of course you're then funneling them back into your own Discord, where they become part of that community. They become your advocates. They feel like they're participating in the development of the game, and crucially, as you build towards launch, they're as excited as you are about the game being out there, because it's a journey that they've been on as well. And you can see how it builds here, from very modest starts of just putting a demo live and a few people playing it. Having code available means that there's no friction between somebody looking for something to stream. And again, we saw some of the key moments with Dungeons came through people just picking it up, seeing it, picking it up, showing it off to other people, and then talking about it. We had a really interesting time with this because we signed Dungeons before Balatro was on. Balatro was on stream by the time we'd signed it, but we started talking to Mike before Balatro was on Steam, and we sort of really liked that idea. And then we had this idea of the comparisons between the two, and actually we work very closely with PlayStack, and the two developers, Local Thunk and Purple Moss, had a relationship as well. And so collaborating externally really did pay dividends here. So, Steam is such a consumer friendly platform. You can buy a game and you can refund it within 2 weeks if you've played for under 2 hours, or longer in certain circumstances. And so you should never be afraid of hiding your code from players if you're proud of it. So just as a quick example of the reaction to like thumbs up and then comments on the Steam forum, but you can see how over time how that community grew through updating the demo on Steam and posting about it too.
Thank you, Simon.
Thanks, Rich.
So that pretty much takes us to the end. What I hope we've shown here is that in order to get attention now in 2025, although this has always been the case, the core thing we've called it love here, but the core thing is emotional attachment, because it's a long, you need to build a relationship, because it takes along the buying cycle for something, a game, anything that's less than $5, the buying cycle is not immediate. So things that are very that are cheap can have a very short buying cycle, but generally things that cost more than $5 have a long buying cycle, or longer. And the nature of releasing a game gives you an opportunity to build a relationship with potential buyers, to build emotional connections with them, that makes them much more likely when they are in market to buy your game, and if they're in love with that game, to go on and put a review on Steam, or to tell their friends, this is the game, this is what I'm doing. So that is the end of our talk. Thank you very much for your time. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
We do have a question in the chat. I don't know if you wanted to take a look at that.
Hello, David. We should have had some pictures taken together, shouldn't we, David? Because I love David and I love Lawn Mowing Simulator. And he was very patient with me, actually. But we took a long time to meet up. We had some miscommunication right at the start. And I also met David for the first time at Pocket Gamer. But yeah, that was the idea of really loved what the team were doing. We went up to Liverpool and played the game, and actually the reaction for me was just seeing how the game appealed to people that wouldn't ordinarily like that sort of thing. I appreciate it's a hypothetical question, David. Yeah, look, it's a people business. You know, I always say that, and it starts with obviously the game is important, but the people are more important. And you know, I would never sign the best game in the world from somebody I did not admire, respect, and like either, because it's a tough job, right? That, you know, it's not a science. It's not a case of if you do X, Y happens. You know, there will be periods where it gets tense, and there'll be disagreements, and it's really important that you like and respect everybody that you're working with, to the extent that you're able to have honest and frank conversations. I remember Armin from Double Moose. Me and him, when we were publishing Just Die Already, we had a disagreement, and Armin swore at me and shouted at me, and I was really happy that he could do that, because we dealt with it. We had a disagreement, and then we moved on. We did that because we really respected each other. So it's difficult when people change. I would say, you know, so find someone you love and grab hold of them, David. That would be my advice to you.
On the second one from Junti, you love the game as a publisher, but can't find players to love it too. I think the answer is probably in the question, really, is if you do love that game, it's about thinking about what it is about the game that you love, because that's what you've got to try and uncover, is the central core of how you build an emotional connection with a potential player on it. And there might be about something in the game. Often there's a what we call aha moment, about when people get the game, and when you can find what that aha moment is, you then need to put that in your marketing, so people recognize it and can see it. You know, anything video led can be done really well there. So if you're struggling to find players that love it too, but people aren't liking it, is it the wrong audience? Is it the wrong kind of player? But it's more likely, well, the other possibility is just the messaging is wrong, and instead of thinking about telling them about features and price and where to buy it, you start pulling back and really think about why you fell in love with that game, and then sharing that, and not that specific story, but the emotional part of that story with the audience. And you can do that through trailers and through partnerships with content creators, making sure that they understand the game and they understand those aha moments and are responding to those as well. And yeah, that's what I would say. Simon.
Yeah, and from a comms point of view, it can be tricky, right? But I think that enthusiasm and passion are infectious. Like we, so again, going back to the point that sometimes we've sort of struggled for sort of wider media attention. We're having to really lean into the fact that these are games and genres that we love. We announced the Royal Writ a couple of weeks ago, and we are launching into a games media that is devastated, that is writing about things that are already popular, and so you come in with something that's unannounced is very, very difficult. And I've had to sort of come out and just sort of, you know, put my credibility on the line and go, look, we could not stop thinking about this game when we first saw it, in the hope that you look at the games that we've done previously. If you like those sorts of games, it's from those people too. We're announcing, and I think actually the quote in the Royal Writ press release was about us wanting to marry the game, and we're announcing another roguelike next week. If it's been spoiled already by the mothership, we're announcing it during Camp Yog next week. And again, you know, I remember. I think this is true in the press release as well. When I first saw that game at an event last year, I took a photo of it and I put it in the internal company Discord, and I said, I think these guys are flirting with us, because it was so aimed at us, squarely at us, at the things we love. And I've been, that's something that I'm saying externally as well. It's like, you know, as soon as we saw this, we were besotted. So it is hard, John T, I know. But yeah, use your own passion and enthusiasm, and hope that spreads.
Tremendous. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for taking part in today. Really, really appreciate it. We can end there and let people sort of filter off, unless there's any more questions at all. But otherwise, thank you so much. It's been really, really interesting.
I'll let Rich close, but just to say that point about sharing information and you know, having a context that we can understand, that the bee in the bonnet I've got at the moment is we're all scrabbling around for information on how games are performing, and all we've got at the moment are these estimates, which are wrong. Now, you know, they are sort of generally, you can get a general sense of there or thereabouts, but I've looked at how our games, if you look at how, you know, if you look on a couple of the services about how our games are performing, out of the 16, one of them is right. A lot of them are there or thereabouts. One of them is 80% out. They've underestimated how many we've sold by 80%. Now, if you look at it from a broad point of view, like, okay, well, look, most of them are sort of right-ish, but you never know whether you're looking at the one that is so far out, and I think that's dangerous. And so if anybody who's watching now or is watching the recording wants to check in on sort of what we've done, I'm really, really happy to share. And I think the spirit of collaboration for everybody in the industry is hugely important. So you can find me on Blue Sky, not Twitter, obviously, and my email address is byron@yogscast.com. Yes, happy to share. Rich?
Yeah, thanks for that, Simon, and thanks for everyone for listening, I guess. And yeah, let's some bit more love in your lives, everyone. It's the most important thing.